Can you look at these two glasses? Do you think that they have the same amount of juice? You think they have the same? Okay. Now we're going to pour this juice into this glass. Now, do you think that this glass has more juice, this glass has more juice, or do you think that they have the same amount?
That one has more.
This one has more, and why do you think that this one has more?
Because it's taller.
So first we're going to look at these two cups right here. Do you think there's the same amount of juice in this glass as there is in that glass?
They're even.
They're even? Okay. So we're going to take the juice from this glass and pour it into this one right here.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to look at this glass and that one. So do you think that there's more juice in this glass, more juice in this glass, or do you think that they have the same amount?
Same amount.
Okay, why do you think that they have the same amount?
Just because this is skinny doesn't mean it's not the same amount. It has the same amount of juice in it, but this one is just wider and this one's skinnier, but they have the same amount of juice in it.
The formal operational stage of cognitive development is reached when an adolescent begins to think abstractly and to reason hypothetically. When asked the hypothetical question, what if people had no thumbs, pre-adolescent children like Jalur and Jenny respond much differently than adolescents do.
Because I have 4 fingers and be able to write or nothing.
You wouldn't be able to tell a person that they're like good and this.
That's good.
And wouldn't be able to write really good. And you couldn't play thumb wrestling.
And the most sophisticated way for averaging a large number of test scores, such as this, was invented by Charles Spearman way back in 1904, and it's called factor analysis. And factor analysis really gives us a weighted average of a large number of mental measurements, whatever measurements are put into the hopper. And this weighted average, the weights consist of the degree to which any one test measures what all of the tests are measuring in common. And Spearman called this common factor G for general ability. And when you average a whole lot of different kinds of tests, say vocabulary, arithmetic, block designs, information, various kinds of puzzles, you name it, any mental kind of test that you could think of is averaged into this thing. The things that are specific to those tests get averaged out, so to speak. And what comes through is some general factor. And Spearman invented this method of factor analysis that tells us to what extent any given test measures what is common to all of the tests that went into the analysis. And this is called the test's G loading, general factor loading. To what extent does the test measure what is common to all of the tests?
have been some sensational headline-courting studies of genetic and social influences that have suggested that fundamental differences in intelligence may exist between genders and races, but many of these studies are tangled up in questions of how potential testing bias may affect performance. Basically, if a test inadvertently measures differences caused by cultural experiences or social factors instead of what we might call innate intelligence, then you might say that the test is biased. Extreme example, in the past, immigrants to the US were classified as feeble-minded if they couldn't answer distinctly American questions, like who was the first American president, or what's a milkshake? Today, concerns about bias focus on differences among members of the same general culture. Say, a poor rural kid who might be plenty smart but will test low if questions involve urban upper-class concepts like taking taxis and drinking tea out of giant cups or the rules of tennis. So the questions themselves can skew performance results, but who administers the test can also affect outcomes.
You may not realize it, but your brain actually processes information in two very distinct ways. Like when you look at this photo, you instantly know she has blonde hair, is visibly angry, and likely has some choice words to yell. Without any effort, you experienced fast thinking. But if you look at the following problem, something different happens. Sure, you immediately know it's a multiplication problem, and you knew you could solve it if you had the energy, but didn't. If you do try, your muscles will tense, your pupils will dilate, and your heart rate will increase. Now, you've experienced slow thinking. These two systems of fast and slow thinking dictate much of our perception and reaction in life. Take these lines for example. It's clear that they're different lengths, but if you measure them, they're actually the exact same length. Even now that you know, System 1 or your fast thinking can't stop seeing the illusion because it acts automatically. A similar effect is seen here. Which figure is the largest? Again, they're all the same size, but the suggestion of perspective and depth causes your System 1 to interpret the picture as three-dimensional, even though it's on a flat two-dimensional surface. It's making quick work of the available information, and so your conscious System 2, or slow thinking, must compensate after the fact and choose not to believe your intuition or instinct. Want to see your System 2 in action? I'll show you a string of 4 digits, you read them aloud, then add 1 to each of the original digits. If the card reads 3795, the correct response would be 4806. We'll then go to the next card and you'll do the same, followed by the next card. Ready? Go. Few people can cope with more than 4 digits, but even harder is add 3. The interesting bit is that though your pupils would have dilated, you often become effectively blind when you fully engage System 2. Did you notice the color of the text change? Or how about the fact that the numbers completely changed when I put them off to the side? Listen to the following puzzle. A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Chances are your System 1 intuition was yelling 10 cents, but this appealing System 1 answer we know is wrong. In fact, the correct answer is 5 cents. Even if you worked out the correct answer, you likely thought of 10 cents along the way. System 1 is trying to work out an answer as quickly and seamlessly as possible, which is extremely beneficial in everyday life. If every activity required full mental effort, it would be exhausting. But knowing this allows us to understand that not all of our first impressions are correct. How many animals of each kind did Moses take into the ark? So few people detect what is wrong with this question that it's been dubbed the Moses illusion. In fact, Moses took no animals, Noah did. Again, our brain invests as little resources as necessary so that things run quickly and smoothly. Because Moses is not abnormal in the biblical context, System 1 unconsciously detects an association between Moses and ark and quickly accepts the question. In a similar way, System 1 generates context without you knowing. Reading each of the following may seem fairly simple. A, B, C, Anne approached the bank, and 12, 13, 14. But your brain actually interpreted these ambiguous statements without you ever knowing. You could have read it as A, 13C, or 12, B, 14, but your brain created the context unconsciously. Also, you likely imagined a woman with money on her mind walking towards a building with tellers. But if the sentence before this was, they were floating gently down the river, the entire scene would have changed because bank is no longer associated with money. Without an explicit context, System 1 quickly generates one based on previous experience. In this case, you've likely visited more banks than rivers, and so the context is resolved accordingly. This ties into a concept called priming. For example, if I said wash, how would you complete this word fragment? Most would see soap, but had I just shown you the word eat, you'd be more likely to see soup. In this way, both eat and wash prime your thoughts. Though System 2 likes to think that it's in charge and knows what's going on, the truth is that priming effects have even been shown to affect and modify behavior. These arise in System 1, and you have no conscious access to them. If you'd like.
Women tend to do better with a fellow female administrator, and African Americans often score higher if their test is given by an African American instructor. And the risk of bias may even fall to the test taker's own expectations. For example, many studies have found that if you give a math test to equally capable men and women, but just before starting you tell the subjects that women usually score lower than men, you actually negatively affect the women's performance. This self-fulfilling concern that you might mess up and inadvertently fulfill some negative stereotype is called stereotype.